Hello everyone. Welcome to SQL in the City Streamed. Today I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that DBAs can find from SQL Monitor to help them plan their day and be more effective and efficient. I'm Kathy Kellenberger, the editor of Simple Talk, but many years ago I was a developer who became an accidental DBA responsible for about 50 SQL Server instances. So what really does a DBA do? In my case, I was responsible for the security. I had to make sure that the principle of least privilege was in place, that no one could get to data that they were not supposed to see or do things they were not supposed to do. It's probably the most important job, I think, for a DBA. I was responsible for backups, and all DBAs know this. This is, I think, job number 2. And also restores, doing test restores to make sure that the backups are really good. There's the big job of keeping all those SQL servers patched and up to date, and that is a lot of work, especially scheduling around all the important things going on with the server. Data integration. A lot of places have either ETL processes or data that gets entered in one system has to be duplicated to other systems, and so that to avoid entering the same thing in multiple places. So there's a lot of that work going on. That's probably the most fun for me. I really enjoyed that. Sometimes DBAs might be responsible for creating some reports or at least being responsible for the SSRS server. HADR, making sure that the SQL servers are always available, making sure that there are plans in place and very highly practiced in case there's a disaster. Really, really important part of being a database administrator. And of course, there's upgrades. Maybe there's software upgrades that you have to make sure that everything works. Maybe sometimes the SQL Server is also getting upgraded at the same time. And of course, there's other projects going on, new software coming in. Maybe there's mergers with other companies. There's so many things going on. And of course, in today's age, not so much back when I was a DBA, this was just a new concept back then, DevOps, making sure that the database is part of the DevOps process so that the database doesn't become a bottleneck to that. So there's a lot of things that DBAs have to be thinking about and taking care of every single day. So when I took over that position, there had not been a dedicated DBA in that job before. And there were no scripts or monitoring or anything to know what was really going on. What I had to do is every day I had to go out to each SQL server and take a look at the jobs manually. And if there was a performance problem or if a SQL server was down, I found out when people called and started complaining. There was really, really nothing in place for me. And of course, I felt like this little mouse. I felt like I was constantly trying to be effective, and it was really difficult. So eventually, I started writing some scripts and tried to start collecting some information that would help me. But of course, that was a slow, long process because I really didn't think about what could go wrong. It was like when things go wrong, then I might think of how to write a script to learn about it later. And so what I really would like to talk to you about today is Redgate's product, SQL Monitor. That if I had a product, this product, or product like this in place, I would not have felt quite like that little mouse. I could have been a lot more proactive and understand what was going on with my servers and make them better. So I'm going to switch over to a demo. And this demo, you can actually go out and play with yourself. There's a site called monitor.red-gate.com. You can go out to that, play around. Don't worry, you can't break anything. Everything is read-only. And it's actually looking at some of the SQL servers that we have here at Redgate. So when I first want to show you is that you can see quite a few SQL servers all in one place. And you can, if you have a lot more, you can change the display to make this little tab smaller. You don't see all the information up front. You've got to hover over. But one of the really cool things about this, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to zoom in just a second here. There are different groupings, and that is highly customizable. So you can group your SQL servers in many different ways. So you might be thinking, we've got SQL servers in several different data centers. We've got SQL servers out in Azure VMs, and we're also running Azure SQL database. So you can actually have a view of all of those SQL servers in your estate in this one tool, even if they're around the world. And we have a feature called Multiple Base Monitor that helps you do that, or that's how we do that. And it's very efficient and very secure, which I think, otherwise you probably wouldn't want to use it. So I'm going to escape out there. On this screen, you can filter by different severity levels. You can filter by the groups. You can sort by severity or by name. It's kind of fun whenever one of the statuses, I can't make it happen, but one of the statuses changes on one of these servers, they flip position. It's kind of fun to watch. Just looking at these little cards, I can see quite a bit of information about what's going on, just a quick view. So as a DBA, this is going to give me a real quick glance of what's going on. Of course, there are notifications that you can set up. There are, over on the side here, there are alerts that you can see. You can have those alerts go to Slack, for example, or have them go to you as a text message or be collected in SCOM. So there's a lot of flexibility. But what I really, really want to show you today are the estate pages. So I'm going to jump over to the estate pages, and there are 4 different pages here. I'm going to start with the first one called the installed versions. So what's the problem this solves is keeping track of which patches are out there, which servers are up to date, and how do I know what the latest patch is? So back when I was a DBA, I had a spreadsheet, and I would think that dealing with patching, one of my least favorite parts about that job, really hated it, but part of it was going out and gathering information, going out to the server, select at version just to make sure, what patch is out there. I had that spreadsheet, but you know how we humans are, we often forget to go and update things, right? We don't always do that. So the beauty of this is that for all those servers that are monitored, and this is only showing some 2017 and 2016, it will show you what level everything is, and it has a link to go out and get the latest patches. So this is just an overview of everything. But if I scroll down, this is probably where I'm really interested. I can see all of the SQL Server instances individually, and if I see the little green check mark, I know that guy's up to date. And if I see like a yellow one, hey, there's a patch out there. It also shows the end of mainstream support. So that's really something to keep in mind, when things are going out of support, because you really want to start thinking about that, a year in advance at least, so you can be prepared. Sometimes those upgrades are a lot of work. So what I really love about this is I don't, as a human being, have to keep track of all this stuff. This tool will do it for me. So it's going to save a lot of time. I still have to deal with doing the actual patching, but at least this takes care of part of the problem for me. So if I go back up and look at the next estate page, it's the disk usage. So I remember going to my manager and saying, hey, this particular SQL server, whenever a year ago, when we rolled the SQL server out, we thought we knew how much data it was going to take, but guess what? At the current rate, we're gonna run out probably in a month. Not a nice conversation to have, because maybe there was not extra space available. Maybe they were going to have to order extra space on the SANs, or bring another SAN in. So with this particular tool, this particular screen, you can take a look at, in this case, what I'm showing you right now, the overall estate, how things look. And that's kind of interesting. This line up here shows us the current capacity, and here's the trend. So we're not growing a whole lot here. Now, if you were, you could, you could filter whatever to look at different groups. So let's say you actually had your storage segregated according to the different groups. That might be the case. You could filter, and then maybe you could see how things were going to run out at a certain time. So what you can do is scroll down and look at each drive individually. See how much space is used, how much capacity is there, look at the percent, and look at the projections. We don't have a lot of problems on this screen, but it's possible that a tool like this will help you spot some problems, so you won't have those unfortunate, uncomfortable conversations because you waited too long to let management know you were going to need space. You can also, let me go click on, if I click on one that's got a lot of files, it will take a while to load. So I'm just going to click on one I know is not too bad. It's going to pull in quite a bit of information here. And on this particular volume, it'll show us, how much free space, how much is allocated to SQL Server, how much is used on those files. We have a nice summary there. And if I scroll down a little more, then it talks about each file on that drive, how big it is, and how much is used. So, running out of disk space, that's going to stop your SQL Server, obviously, or at least, I guess, depends on what it is. If it's TempDB runs out, your SQL Server will probably stop. If it's a particular user data volume or data file, well then, nobody's going to be able to insert or update any data. So it's pretty important to keep track of this. I'm going to take a look at another thing. I said earlier that backups were job number 2. And one of the things that happens is that whether you use the built-in maintenance wizard or whether you use scripts, it's often possible that you selected certain databases to be backed up. So the problem is, what happens if you bring a new database in there and forget to add it to the job? This can happen. The other thing is, what if it's a database with full or bulk logged recovery and you forget to set up log backups? So this was, when I was a DBA, this was one of the most important things I cared about every day. I was always worried that there would be a database that wasn't getting backed up. And so that was one of the first things I looked at every morning. So the screen here again, all of these screens you can filter by groups, and then depending on what it is, there's other options here. This particular graph lets you know how many, for what you filtered, have certain how many are getting have been backed up within this certain time period. But I really like what we're looking at down here. We can see the latest backup, depending on what kind it is. Like for this one right here, we've got the latest full backup, the latest differential, and the latest log. You can see how long it's ran. And also, one thing that to me really important, I can filter, or not filter, but I can sort by the recovery model. So I can make sure that everything in full is getting a log backup. You may be wondering what this little red icon is here. This means that it was backed up using our Redgate SQL backup tool. So I think this is pretty important, mostly to look for those outliers. And if I expand it, I can get some information about, over time, how it's performed. It looks like it's taken a little bit to load there. Probably was so. I think I'm going to skip that and move on, but you can see information about, over time, how that backup has performed. Then I'm going to switch over to the SQL agent jobs. Again, like I mentioned, that was always really important to know how those jobs performed, not only how they performed, whether they failed or succeeded. And when I first started, I had to go out to every single SQL server and just take a look. Really, really a waste of time. Not a waste of time, it was important that it was done, but the way I was doing it was really a waste of time until I got something in place that collected that information for me. So we've got a lot of successful jobs here. I think most environments, there's going to be failures here and there. You can see, hopefully you can see that little red, that there was a job that failed right around April 1st. And if I scroll down, notice this says no failed jobs. I really thought that was a bug at first, but that just means the last time it ran. So if a job failed and then ran successfully, it won't show up here, only the latest run. But if I come down here and I'm going to sort by fails, sort again the other way, I can see that this job failed 2 times in the time period. It's a week that I'm filtering on. And I can expand this, and then I can see a little bit more about what's going on. I can see all the times that it succeeded. I can see whether or not it's taking longer and longer for that job to run. Okay, and let me just filter on status here. And there's the 2 times that it failed, and I've got the error message. And I can also, which this is pretty cool, I can click this overview timeline button, and it will take me to our, I guess this is the overview page where I can see everything that was going on at on that instance at that time. You know, for example, CPU, memory, I/O, weights, the things that are really important. I could, if I wanted to, scroll down, see what the top queries were running at that time, the top weights. So that gives me an idea if something else going on the SQL server was actually causing a problem. So I'm going to close that up. And that really is a fast overview of the SQL agent jobs. But since I've got a little bit of time, I'm going to show you a couple of more things. I showed you the overviews a minute ago, and I'm going to show you something that I think is really cool. If I scroll down, whoops, let me click on one of the cards. That is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to click on the card, and I clicked on the alert instead. One thing that I can do on this page is I can just move this timeline to just drill into a particular timeline, and everything on the page changes. So I can see that there was a big spike in CPU at that time. So I'm going to want to research that further and troubleshoot that a bit. So I can take a look at the top queries after scrolling down, and when I open this up, I can see more information about the query, the actual query. I can click that to view the query plan. I'm not going to do that though for now. And then if I scroll down a little bit more, I can see the weight types. I think this is pretty neat that it automatically correlates those things for me. If I click on this little information button, I can learn more about this particular weight. If it's a weight that's new to me, if you're a DBA, this one probably is not new to you. You've probably seen it a lot, but it tells me what it's about and maybe some things to investigate, some troubleshooting tools that help me figure out what that is and how I can solve it. The other thing that I think is pretty neat is if I go to top weights and I'm going to look for that same weight type, and it gives me a lot of information about the weight type. Here's a little description, but if I do a little more scrolling, I can find the queries that are affected by that weight. So we can go from both directions. And I think that's pretty cool. So I have a little bit more time, so I'm going to show you another thing that I really think is neat. So you can create your own custom reports based on all the metrics that are collected. So all of those things, you can just go in, kind of a drag and drop report. I'm not going to show you how to do a report here, but I'm going to take you over to the configuration page and point out that you can create custom metrics. So if there's something else that you would like to collect that we aren't collecting, you can set that up. And the nice thing is that those are not second-class metrics. Those are also available when you create the reports. So, how do you get started creating those custom metrics? Well, one thing that we have provided for you is a page where you can learn more about it, but you can also click that and find some metrics that are already in place. Now, some of these have been created by the monitor team here at Redgate. There's a bunch of them, but there's other ones that have been created by leaders in the community. Some of them are friends of Redgate. Probably a lot of them are. Some of them just might be people that use our product and got a great idea and said, hey, Redgate, would you like this? And we say, sure. So if I click on one of these, I can learn all about it. And if I click this install metric, it's not going to work here because I'm read-only at this point, but it gives me all this information. It gives me the query, and if I feel like it, I can just follow this wizard here and just immediately install it. If I want to, I can make some tweaks to it, whatever I want to do. So that's really, really useful, I think. And what you might be wondering is like, well, maybe there's some out there that would be really useful. Let's get back one more page here. There we go. That's where I wanted to be. We also have tags that you can, for example, if you want to click on security, what are all the custom metrics that are out there, or best practices, or whatever it is, you can find them. And if you come up with some yourself, if you're using SQL Monitor, feel free to let us know if you've come up with something really interesting that you think others might like to use. So what I'd like to say then is that, database administrators they're juggling a lot, just like that lady juggling I showed you earlier in the slides. There's a lot to keep track of, and things are changing. Not only do we have to worry about SQL servers on-premises, we have to start thinking about moving to Azure, moving to Azure SQL databases, using VMs in different parts of the world. There's a lot to worry about. There's new regulations that come in, GDPR, for example, and the plethora of new laws that are starting to happen in the US. So a tool like this can help a DBA save time. They don't have to worry when a new version of SQL Server comes out with a new way to collect metrics or something that's been deprecated. We take care of that. So when a new version comes out and we support that, we're going to take advantage of those new things. DBA doesn't have to do it. So I really would like to invite you to go out to monitor.redgate.com and play with the tool and just see how easy it is to use. I think it's pretty easy. And you might be interested in trying it out, so you can download it right from that page. I'd also like to tell you about SimpleTalk. I'm the editor of SimpleTalk. It's owned by Redgate, but we have lots of articles from people in the .NET and the SQL Server community, Oracle community, and they're about just topics that you care about. They're not about our products. So I really, really suggest that you go out and take a look. And I kind of think that a lot of you have already been out there just from searches that you've done. If you need to contact me, you can contact me at kathy.kellenberger@red-gate.com. And you can also find me on Twitter at Aunt Kathy. Well, that's really all I have for today. So thank you, and I hope you have enjoyed SQL in the City Streamed. Goodbye for now.